So the next thing that I would do is I want to even out this rim just a little bit. I'll do that by gently flipping it over, cupping my hands, and gently dropping it on the table. A note about picking things up. You want to hold the clay as if you were holding a newborn baby, because everything that you do is going to leave an impression on it. When I'm picking this up, I'm not squeezing, not one bit. I'm just using the friction of the water in the clay and the dryness of my hands right there. No pressure whatsoever. And I'm not dropping it very far. No, it's right above the table, just about this far. Notice when I carry the clay, I'm always cupping it in my hands. I never grab the edge of the clay and try and carry it like that. Okay, so you'll see the top is now flat, but we have some inconsistencies with the thickness. What we can do then is we can trim. Although looking here, I've got a point that's so inconsistent that I actually want to mold and push the clay around before I remove any. So what I'll do is I'll gently start pushing that together just a little bit, just a little bit. Gently, 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 gently. Just sort of using the friction in my hands to push that clay into it, just so slight. Don't try and do it all at once, little by little by little. And you can see that this has gotten a bit thicker now. Now I can work with this. So what I want to do with these inconsistencies, I can either rub them down into the clay body. That might be a very good way to go. Smoothing and smoothing and smoothing. Or I might choose to trim it. A good tool for trimming clay is what you call the loop tool. With the loop tool, you can take off the clay little by little. Well, actually, you could take off the clay quite a bit, so you have to be gentle. But you see where it's a little bit thinner here, a little bit thicker here. So I'll just take this thick part and make it a little bit thinner and leave my thin part alone. And go round and round. And if I have to go around more than once, that's okay. Making it nice and consistent. The rim is one of the most important parts to make consistent because that's what people are going to see the most. But we want good craftsmanship everywhere, and especially in this project, because this project's very simple. Simple projects in some ways are harder than complex ones because there's nowhere to hide. Everything you see is going to, or everything you do, I should say, is going to be seen. It was a little bit thicker here, so I'll just keep just slightly. You see, I'm not taking much off at all, just slightly getting rid of that. My tool clean. Notice also that I'm always supporting or the bowl as I trim it. Watch out! So an area like this here, the blade could snag and take a bunch out right at once. You want to be careful of such things. So here, I'm going to change my direction a little bit so I can go from there, go from here, and get it just so. Once I get the inside done, I might work on the outside a little bit as well. Using very little pressure, little by little, just Whenever I see a spot that's high, I try and take it down to the level of the low spot that's next to it. See how that's becoming nice and consistent right there. Now here I've got, looks like a little tear, a little rip. I can just score that up a little bit, get a little bit of clay, just some of these little scraps right here. Take a dab of water. When you're working with water, don't use it very heavily. A little water is all it takes. If you use too much water, you make your clay body weak. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point, just good. Good is good enough, because we have further steps that we can do. When you're working with the clay like this is very soft clay, good for molding things. Later, when the clay becomes a little bit drier, we'll call it leather hard. That's when it's still very workable. You can bend it just a little bit, but it's not going to be near so soft and delicate like this is. Later on, after it's dried up, we'll call it greenware. And when it's dried even more, we'll call it bone dry. And then it's ready to fire. Be patient. Clay is not something that you need to do quickly. It's a very relaxing art. Literally very grounding. You're just playing with dirt after all. Okay, notice that even though I'm smoothing it out a little bit right now, I'm not using any water because this clay at this point is pretty much right out of the bag. It's very soft. One of the number one things that people do wrong is they get that clay all wet. They think if it's all gushy, it's going to make it easier. But it doesn't. It makes their lives harder because the clay loses all its strength. It becomes a bunch of mush.